Good evening, everyone. My name is Andy Coronado, and tonight on the show, we discuss CF Montreal's draw versus DC United, Canada men's national team roster selection, that and a lot more on episode 218 of The Ball is Round. Hello, good evening, everyone. Hope you guys weren't too impacted with the weird weather change that's what's going on. There's rain, there's sun, it's warm, it's cold. Elias, what is happening, man? What is I don't
Snow
know.
is melting.
I don't
So
know
I
whether
don't
to
care
wear a
how.
sweater. I don't know whether to wear shorts. I don't know if I'm gonna catch a cold or I don't know. It's just kind of strange these days.
As long as the snow's melting, the rain makes it melt even faster. So you know what? La vie est belle. My dad
Look,
barbecued tonight, so we're
let's
good.
let's let's just say this weather is as consistent as Laurent Courtois' lineups. Anyways, as you guys
Oh,
can see, I'm joined by my good friend Elias. How we doing, man? How are things?
great! Did you watch that Atleti Barcelona game? I'm so great. Oh no.
They won, right? They won
They won
4
4-2. They were down 2
4-2.
nothing in the
Yes.
70.
Well,
1-4-2.
it was a late night game. So it was
This team,
oh,
man. Swear to
you know
God.
what I was doing actually, Elias? Instead of watching that game, because I mean, whatever. I was watching that Apple TV show. The one is that talks about the MLS, that follow the MLS teams. That I forgot the name right now. Anyways, very interesting show. Um, Bayern
Especially all the
Munich.
CF Montreal content in there.
Yeah, that will be. I think the fans would chew that one up. But anyways,
I
Bayern
wish.
Munich drew against 13th place Union Berlin. We lost last week.
Wonderful.
We tied this week. Fantastic
And
stuff.
you still have a 10-point
And
lead,
we're
man.
still first
I don't
place.
want to hear it.
So who the hell cares?
There.
But so look, we'll dive right into it.
Yes,
CF
sir.
Montreal played their fourth game on the road at Audi Field against DC United, and came out with their first points of the season on what feels like, to me, feels like a victory, and I think to a lot of fans feels like a victory, right? A
Absolutely.
point is a point. But before we get into the game, Elias, both you and I went to practice this week on separate days. And I'm sure we both had our impressions. Now, this show is not going to be about practice because I think we spent a lot of time during the off season talking about practice.
Too much
Practice,
time.
right? But we still went, and there were
Mhm.
still things that we saw, we heard, So let's talk about that. Like I
Yeah,
said,
man.
this practice isn't a game, but what was there anything in particular, Elias? You went on Tuesday. Was there anything in
Yeah.
particular that stood out to you in that practice that you went?
There's two things that I mean, one was fairly obvious, and the other one was a really interesting thing that actually was well reflected in the game because it was used to great effect. First one was obviously Benteke prep. I don't think anyone's surprised with the fact that and George Campbell said it after the game as well. 90% of the time is spent thinking about Benteke because I mean, look, at the end of the day, that is the big danger, man. That is probably pound for pound the most lethal scorer, individual scoring force in MLS. And so I think it's fair that you have your probably your best aerial defender working on that. And so yeah, every defender was working. There was just I don't know if it was the same thing for you, but on Tuesday it was literally just a section cordoned off where they had everybody just lobbing balls into the area,
Yep.
and then they had defenders just sending it back. And yeah, I mean that works for Benteke, but also at the same time, you've seen how poor this team was clearing their lines. That cost them the game in Minnesota. That cost them goals in Vancouver and in Atlanta. So you know what? It's good general practice, but when Benteke is knocking at your door, it's even more important. The other one that was really interesting was they worked a lot on including the center backs, especially the middle one, which is Joel Waterman and Fernando Alvarez at the end of the game, into the attack, stepping out of defense and into midfield. which is really interesting because all season they've been struggling with being outnumbered in the midfield. And last year, Nathan Saliba and Samuel Piet did all right. And we're going to talk about this more specifically when we get
Yeah,
to the midfield.
yeah,
But having Joel Waterman step up into the midfield was so important, especially in so many different parts where they built out from the back. Um, and you could tell that's something they've been working on specifically for these types of games where there is a certain amount of openness in the middle. And it worked really well, I find.
yeah. Absolutely, I agree with you, and that's when I went on Wednesday. I was yes, absolutely. I saw that drill where it seemed like they were using their starting center backs. And Elias, I didn't really see it as a we're practicing for Benteke week. What I saw it as was like, look, guys, truth of the matter is we have an issue in this phase of our game,
Mhm.
crossing, defending it, second ball, and all that. That's our issue. That's what's been leading to so many to all the most of the goals. And they've said that in the press conference. It's no secret. And they practiced it. They saw
They
the
did.
issue and they
They
practiced
did.
it. And that's what it felt like. Then they did a scrimmage, and that's when everything turned around for me, Elias. And when they did the scrimmage, because all of a sudden I'm seeing a back four. All of a sudden I'm seeing three in the midfield, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is different. Because I've seen practices during the off season, and I had not seen. It was very clear that there were no three midfielders. So I
Yeah.
was here with Maxime Trouman, the great Maxime. So shout out to Maxime Trouman, and he was also observing the same thing. We were both tripping out. We were looking at each other like, what is happening right now? They are practicing this. So much for closed doors practice. They don't want to give away anything to the opponent. Fair enough, understandably, but they were giving out a lot there. And I said, something is changing here because all of a sudden I'm seeing, and we saw it yesterday in the game. We'll get into it a little
Mhm.
bit more. But yeah, those were the impressive. Now, there was one thing, Elias, that stood out to me on the day I went. Okay, now we talk about the intensity of the game, of the practices and all that, which is
Yeah.
great. But something that kind of lacked. And again, I was kind of chit chatting with Max to see, two eyes are better than one, right? Because we were seeing the drills that they were having, passing drills. They were just doing simple passing drills to kind of, you pass the ball, one man moves, and all that. It's kind of everything has to work, Elias. Just like in a game, everything has
Yeah.
to work. And even in the practice drill, so the practice drill can continue because we've played soccer, we've coached soccer, and we know that when there's that one person that messes up a drill or messes that part of the drill, it messes up the whole thing, and you have to restart,
Mhm.
right? There was a lot of that, Elias. It was like almost a lack of focus, a lack of sharpness in the tiny things of passes, and I was like, this is not off season. This is the fourth game of the week of the
Yeah.
year that we're preparing, and we're having that. And before we get into it, I do want to say, I know we have a lot to talk about. We have had some people tell us hi here today. So hello Herve, hello Patrick White, hello
Mhm.
Robert Tirinardi. Thank you guys so much. Hello LP Habs fan. We do see you guys. So thank you for
And
joining us tonight.
anybody else that joins the
And
pod.
anybody else that, even if you're not putting in the
Salute.
chat, we do see you out there. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
joining us. But yeah, so we just wanted to those were kind of our impressions of Pride. Did you get anything else? Was it pretty much the same thing you saw?
Same thing. After that, it's pretty much run of the mill training. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, most of the takeaway that I took was from the defensive line for good reason because I mean, look at the game they just put on, right?
yeah, exactly. And so before we break it down, because we just guys quickly want to talk about practice, but now we're gonna get to the real stuff, the fun stuff, right? The game, the actual game, right? So before we break it down position by position, Lies, what was your reaction when you saw the lineup?
Yeah, I mean, starting lineup: Jean Sirois, Campbell, Waterman, Petrazo. Not too surprising there.
You can believe
Guboglu,
it.
Luturi, Herbert, Saliba, Sealy. At training, again, that's not much of a surprise. We saw Dante Sealy getting a lot of reps. Tom Pierce, for better for worse, has not been super effective. Um, and Vilsain Owusu up top was probably the big surprise because again, we saw Owusu doing solo work for a significant amount of the week and last week. And so maybe that was focused on getting him ready. But either way, no Caden Clark again. Very curious.
Who? We
Very
don't talk about Caitlin Clark,
ah,
but
come on.
but no, it was yeah. When I saw that again, where is Caden Clark? Right?
Yeah.
We in practice though. Again, we go back to practice. He wasn't with the starting lineup. He
Nope.
was
Nope.
always with the
He was
backups.
training with the substitutes. Yes, he
And
was.
again, is it an injury thing? Is it a personal thing? We don't know because these questions are not answered to us, right? So, but he was never placed as a starter. So, but yeah, absolutely. When I saw Elias, when I saw that lineup, and Elias and I were talking before the show, we were like, you know what? I actually watched the game today because last night we were both stuck in family stuff. And yes, we were doing the whole thing, Elias, where you put the phone under the table, and I'm like,
Oh
hopefully they
hell
don't
no! It
see.
was on the table. You
Yeah,
kidding me?
me too. It was on the table,
It
and my
was
wife was
on
just
the
like,
table.
"Have some respect for this family reunion." I just want to watch some CF Montreal. So
I was
yeah,
still
so
engaging in conversation. I can multitask. Don't worry.
yeah, exactly. That's what I tell them. But then she was like, nope, she was having none of it. But I watched it today, exhausted out of my mind. But I understood. I could only see what the comments were being said, right? So yeah, it was when I first saw that lineup, Elias, I actually was like, I knew it. I was like, I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I just like I said on my ex account, I said the only thing that I was surprised about was Owusu being back because I hadn't heard of him
Hmm.
nor seen him
Yeah,
practice all week. But all of a sudden he shows up and he played all 90 minutes. No, he got subbed off. Sorry, he got subbed off.
he still played
But
like 70 minutes though.
yeah, and I was like that. I was and I really liked what I saw, by the way, from Julian saying and Sunusi in practice. I thought that would work really well. But anyways, that was my reaction. I was like, I knew it. But now what's gonna happen? This is either gonna be disastrous 5-0 defeat, or we're actually gonna show up. So let's get started. Last week
Let's
we
do it.
started from the back, but this week I think we're gonna leave the best for last. So
Okay.
this week we'll start from the top. We had Prince Owosu and Jonathan Vilsain, which we just spoke about on the top. What did you think of that combination, 202?
As a combination, I didn't like it. I felt like redundant isn't the right word, but I felt like they did cancel each other out a little too much.
Okay.
And if you saying, despite having a similar physical profile to Prince Wusu, is not the same player at all. But it felt like he was being asked to do the same things that Prince Wusu was doing. Right? He very rarely did he get the ball to his feet. Very rarely did he get the ball in a position where he can take people on one-on-one. The one time he did a nice little move in the penalty area. It got poked away, and he almost took a guy's leg off. But again, besides that, I didn't find him to be all that effective. I mean, Robbie kind of says everything, right? 0 goals. That says a lot. Yes, there were chances, but ultimately Prince Owusu had, two really good chances. One in the first minute, one a bit later in the first half, again off a great cross from Sealy, kind of misjudged it in the air. But both those chances were, again, there's a reason this man couldn't get a contract in Toronto, and he's done very good work. But if he was this all conquering, does great work, great hold up play, and is also a lethal finisher, he would not be, looking for a club. He would have clubs chasing after him, not the other way around. Um, so I think that he did a lot of very important work, especially in defense, and I think that is where his importance is, and that's where he's going to be super crucial because we went into this season knowing that okay, Prince Owusu is not going to score 20 goals and have, and score on every 2 shots on target. That's not how this is going to work. But the way he received the ball, the way he absorbed pressure, took players out of position, and then distributed the ball, stuff like that is what draws him apart from Chinonzo 4. Right, where Chinonzo 4 was literally just a target and then you hope for the best. He actually has a plan. So technically, with the ball, excellent work. The finishing was tough to watch. But I think overall, I like what he did. But at the end of the day, you're a striker, right? You're a striker, and Laurent Courtois clearly wants to play offensive, attacking, attractive football. At some point, you do need to start putting in the back of the net because the intangibles you bring is not enough.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right, Elias, and that's actually something that Joseph Martinez and a few times we got him in a press conference. He would say strikers like to score goals. That's what
Mhm.
strikers' job is. He was very straightforward with it, right? And Prince Owusu is a striker. His job is to score goals. He can do a billion different things on the field that are fantastic. I thought he had some great moves. He had some great moves, Elias, around the field, but they
Yep.
weren't in the box. They weren't nowhere near the box. They were in midfield to get to the box. And that's again great moves. Love it. But it's not getting us anywhere if we're not scoring goals because he's supposed to be scoring goals, right? So But I will say one thing, something that stood out for me. I did like Prince Owusu's, again, what he kind of does besides scoring goals. Like, I do like what he does. He kind of sets it up nicely, the game. But what's really stood out for me for Gilles Anthony Vilsain was the fact that I feel like this season as opposed to last season, I think we're seeing a player that is actually putting in that work in the
Mhm.
in the front three defensive, something that we saw him have a big lack of last towards the end of the season, when he was actually, I think he wasn't even on the game sheet. And sometimes
Yeah.
we're not even sure with him if it's an injury or it's really that he's on the, as we call, in the doghouse, right? Like he's not practicing. But we saw him get, in a lot of trouble, in game during games, because he just seemed to disappear when it came to being off ball, right? So when they didn't
Yeah.
have the ball. And I just saw yesterday, and this is something I had also observed from him in the off season, when we went to a few training camps, that he actually was putting in a good shift defensive. He was really running after the ball
Mhm.
and trying to get it, and making an impact in that sense. And that's what I saw yesterday. When he came out of the game, just the fact that it wasn't injured made me so happy. He seemed, I mean, and I don't mean that in a mean way. With all the respect in the world, I was just happy that he was not injured, because it always feels like he's
Yeah.
getting injured, right? And he just put in a good shift. Did he score goals? No. Is he supposed to score goals? I think so, in the position he was placed, because he wasn't placed behind Prince Owosu. It was kind of changing between the
It
two,
was
right?
a two man. Yeah, it was a proper two man. And LP Hasfan has a good point, right? In defense to Jean-Anthony Vincent, once again, he's been hurt. This was his first start. Also, not used to playing up top with two, so a bit of patience, leniency would be fair to him.
Yeah,
Yes, it would be in terms of positioning thing. I get that, but just in terms of there's certain things you do as a player to impact the game, regardless of your comfort in the position, right? When he got the ball at his feet, I felt like he did not do enough to really impact the game in the ways that we've seen him, because we know that he can be a difference maker. We've seen him, have this initiative with the ball, this initiative in attack, and I only saw it once. I really did not get that impression from him for the rest of the game, and so hopefully that's more of a comfort thing. And like you said, um, he can kind of get some consistency behind him and some confidence. But yeah, overall he didn't do poorly. He just didn't really stand out,
yeah.
which is, I mean, it's a nil-nil draw. You're gonna have a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, we've spoken about, whenever we're talking about Jonathan Sirot, a goalie, we're saying, well, no news is good news with the goalie, right? If they're not part of the problem, great, they just did their job. But in the case of forwards and strikers, like
Yeah,
a Wosu or anybody that's up there, like Julien Anthony was saying, they kind of have to be part
they do.
of the story. They need to
Yep.
come out, because they're the only ones they're the main characters when it comes to wins and losses, right? As far as scoring goals, that's their job, that's their role in that position. So, um, again, nil draw. Can't really say much about them, just what they did off ball, or what they did with the ball. But um, I had another question, which you kind of, I guess, answered in a sense, Elias. And 4 games in after yesterday, do you think Prince Owusu as a starter has a decent shot as a starter in this team, or he's a good
With
backup?
everybody healthy, I think Giacomo Vrioni is going to get the benefit of the doubt, especially at home when they expect to have a bit more initiative with the ball. But what I think the work he's doing right now has at least put him ahead of everyone else in terms of the first substitute off the bench. I think at the very least, or also as a reliable workhorse who cannot be the lone striker, but who can definitely work in a tandem. So I think that I don't think he's locked in his spot as a starter. What I think he's done is, until Giacomo Vrioni is healthy, I think he's put himself as one of the more important players on the team sheet because of the work he does leading the line and the press and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, if you had a couple more goals, CFMTL would have a couple more points. But again, like I said before, if he was bagging these goals like that for fun, this player would not be in the club situation that he currently is. So that's just the
Yeah,
reality of it.
and I actually, LP Habs fan just said if they want to play up top too, then he does have a shot, right? They both may
It's a
start.
bit
And
slow. It's a bit slow. That's the only
yeah,
concern. Vrioni and Owusu do bring different things, but you would have to like your fullbacks have to be on it. And we're gonna get into that a little bit later because
Yeah.
Dante Celia and Gobogu had excellent games. But your fullbacks have to be so involved. And I just don't think that having them both is right for Courtois' style, at least.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know if Owusu or Vrioni would. Well, we have to see Vrioni play in this scheme, right?
Yeah. It's
See
all
what he's
hypotheticals until he actually
see
plays.
see what he's actually willing to do, because there's a lot that they have to do beyond scoring goals, right? In this kind of, it's a build up scheme. So next up we got the mid three. Mid three.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd say that. We got the mid three. We got Fabian Herbers, Nathan Saliba, and Victor Lotori. Elias, a midfield of three, something we've been asking for in this show for a very long time. Whenever, when the losses were accumulating, Elias kept saying, why aren't we going midfield three? Why are we not going three in the midfield, right? What did you think of this experiment?
I find it hilarious because this is probably the one game where you could argue they could have gone away without a midfield three, you know? But they made it work. I mean, look, credit to Fabian Herbers, who had two absolute stinkers at the beginning of the season. He was the best player of the three throughout the entire game. He was
Oh,
everywhere. He is exact. This kind of Fabian Herbers is what was advertised when they signed him, right? He was everywhere. He was implicated in all three phases of play. He was taking shots. He almost scored. Another crossbar, which is just unlucky at this point. But he hit the post again in the first half as well. This is the kind of Fabian Herbers that they were so excited to tell us about, right? Not the one that kind of seemed lost in the midfield and just like out to sea. Victor Loturi is the epitome of like a man of two halves at this point, because again, like kind of shaky first half and then literally Samuel Piet in the second half. So I don't get it. Like I think that's gonna be really interesting. I think he's doing more and more to kind of confirm that he is a like for like substitution with Samuel Piet, but it just has to be more consistent. And Nathan Saliba, um, I mean MJR kind of said it. Big worry about Nathan's hustle level. He kind of just seemed to be a passenger, right? He didn't play badly. He didn't play poorly. He didn't play well. And like I said, there's a draw that's going to happen, but you don't expect it to be from one of your best players last year. Nathan Saliba was kind of just there. Didn't really put a foot wrong, but he didn't also improve the team's chances to win. And I'm sorry, but if this is a guy that's dead set on Europe, these first four games, I could count maybe a handful of times, the times I saw Nathan Saliba of 2024. And so I don't know if he's become complacent. I don't know if he's become uh just kind of he's been asked to, or not asked, but if he's just kind of fading into the background a little bit. But there's no way that someone that was this impactful last season have such a step back in terms of just the way that they take over a game. I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm starting to get a little bit disappointed.
I mean, look, I'll say one thing. Fabian Herberts, I completely disagree with you, Elias.
Really?
I like the shots that he took. I really did. I like that. But the rest of the time, Elias, I just felt like the game was going around him and he was a step slower in everything. Um, he didn't do anything horrendous, I think, but I don't know if it's an age thing. I don't know if maybe he's tired. I don't know what it is, but I just felt like he was slower. And that's what I was saying. I saw him a lot of times tired. In the 56th minute, he had his handle, and like you said, he ran a lot. He was everywhere and all that. Maybe that was a factor, and that's what I was catching on, that fatigue of him running everywhere. But I just felt like he was just a step slower in everything. Um, Lotori, as you said, I'm finding it at this point, the fourth game. How many games have we seen him play? I don't know if he's played in all four games at the top of my mind. Has he played in all four games as a sub or
He
as a starter?
has. I think did he play against Vancouver? Yes, he did. He's been in all four.
Okay, even 4 games in, Elias, I can't really define him as a player and what he brings to the team. I think he we saw very nice little cameo of his in the last week where he actually did really, really well in
Hmm.
a moment when they really wanted to score against Vancouver. And but beyond that, yesterday, especially in the three midfield, I it almost felt like the three midfielders weren't really trying to express themselves on their own. They were really trying to work together. Um, Nathan Saliba, you're 100% right. I felt like he was placed very low, close to the defensive meat, almost replacing Samuel Piet, which, as you said, should have been more of a, in my opinion, I think in our opinion, should have been more of a Victor Latouri role, where he's really down low.
Hmm.
But it just, like you said, he doesn't. In order for him to realistically take that next step to Europe, it's not just about having one or two games. You need to actually be completely dominating the league and getting an MVP every game. Doesn't mean wins, but you're getting MVP. You're standing out. But if you're just doing your job, we've always talked about it in this show, Elias. Who's the one player in CF Montreal that most of the time when we're doing this, Elias, we just say he did his job and he did it well?
This is Samuel Piet.
Samuel Piet.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
He was like, wait, what? Yeah. Samuel Piet, he does his
Yeah.
job and he's okay with it. And we're okay. And the fans are okay with it, right? Where he just does his job as long as he doesn't mess up. But I don't think CF Montreal, if Nathan Saliba wants to go take that next step, he just he should be okay with just doing his job. He needs to be more of a standout, a playmaker, a difference maker. There
Mhm.
was one, he was pretty. Again, he moved around a lot and all that, and I think with the maybe I don't know if it's the first time since his time with CF Montreal that he's seen the three midfield, but there seemed to be kind of adjustments, and that was kind of well, my question was going. The next one was I was going to tell you Nathan Saliba was deployed as a deep defensive midfielder that played with Joel Waterman. Now we'll get to the center
Mhm.
backs, but it felt like when we talk about midfield, Joel Waterman in the attack was actually
He was
a
stepping into the
midfielder.
midfield. Yeah,
He was right
absolutely.
next to Nathan Saliba, right?
Yeah,
That was when they were doing the build-up. Um, how did you like him there with that defensive
loved
role?
him.
I know you
I
talked
loved
about
him.
it a bit already, but how did you like that role?
I loved him. Right, he stepped into the defensive midfield role a bit last year, um, and he did it very well. He is a midfielder by trade. You have to remember that, right? He is a
Hmm.
defensive midfielder naturally, and he was converted into a center back under Wilfried Nancy when he came into the club 5 years ago now, 6 years ago, a while ago. Um, but I loved it because again, we talked about it. They have been overrun, passed through, overlooked, any kind of adjective or adverb you could throw about it over the course of the last few games against teams that are good in possession. And DC, for all the directness and all the crossing, have become a much better ball possession team this year. And so when you look at the Vancouver game and you look at the Atlanta game, which were the two games against teams who are good with the ball and good in possession, control tempo, the midfield was completely ignored. They just go, we can either break through you or go around you because you're only two, and they were outnumbered. In possession now, you're four. Out of possession, Joe Warman draws back in your three, but still, that's a three with two proven ball winners, right? Natal Saliba, look, Natal Saliba is very good going forward. You have to remember at the start, right? At the start of his development, he was kind of seen as the heir to Samuel Piet,
Mm.
right? He was a Samuel Piet with more tools in his bag. Now, the fact that they haven't gone out and gone another ball playing midfielder of starting caliber, yes, it got Herbers, but they haven't gone another top caliber ball playing midfielder, means that Natal Silva is the de facto ball player in there, right? When Herbers is in there as well, then there's more options. But when they play with the double pivot, Nathan Saliba is Samuel Piet is a defensive one, Nathan Saliba is the offensive one.
Yep.
Naturally, I see Nathan Saliba as a more defensive one. And I would have seen Mathieu Chouanière or someone like him as the one that can kind of control the play, control the ball, and then be that bridge into attack. Now, Joel Waterman helps everybody do more offensively. Victor Laturi, in possession, stepped out wide to help Alexander Goboglu. Fabian Herbert was able to stretch further up the field, and Natal Saliba then played in a double fit with Joel Waterman effectively. I don't know how good this is for Natal Saliba because he seems to want to take on more and has not done that. But if you're putting him in a double pivot, he seems to be more invisible in the build-up play. If that's going to be his role, he's going to do it well. But the reason we're not impressed with Natal Saliba is because he's not completely taking over games.
Yeah.
If that's going to be the case, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with Natal Saliba not being forced to take over games and run the midfield. If you compensate for that, and Fabian Herbers, as much as I liked his game, and we could disagree with that, again, that's fine. But as much as I liked his game last night, he's not going to be the guy for 30, 35 games this year who's going to run the midfield. Now that Natal Saliba is taking a step back and being more conservative. So I'm all for it, but you have to plan. And that is not going to be a viable long-term thing.
Yeah, and that's actually, Elias, that's actually a legitimate question that I asked myself yesterday. If we're gonna go forward with this three midfield setup, if Fabian Herbers is tired, injured, whatever it is, or he's not performing, who's taking his spot? Assuming again Samuel Piet's not there or whatnot, who's
Bryce
taking his
Duke,
spot?
Caden Clark, right?
I guess yes, he's the most attacking
Right. I mean,
midfield.
again, LP fans
Yeah,
saying Hennady Sinchuk. That again, him, Neil Vrioni. These are all quantum physics players. These are all entirely hypothetical until we see them
yeah.
on the actual field. Hell, until we see them in actual training, because all three of them are still working solo. Until we see them do anything in
It
with
would be
the
nice.
player, we can't really speculate on where they'll be playing or how effective it'll be.
Yeah, I agree. And how badly does CF Montreal need Samuel Piet back in the lineup right now?
Badly. Don't get me wrong, badly. I think Victor Loturi doing the work he's doing has maybe softened the blow. I think, you know, not having him against Vancouver hurt a lot, but not having him against Minnesota was not as bad because again, they had 65 or whatever percent of the ball, right? But you saw it in Vancouver. That hurt not to have Samuel Piet. Game like this was not as bad because again, now that you're three in the midfield,
It's a different game.
and you have Joe Waterman just by proxy, who's stepping up more. The passing through the middle was more discouraged, and they didn't really break lines through the middle. And it's just it's DC, right? They're gonna play wide, they're gonna look for crosses, but yeah, badly, right? Samed Piet is still irreplaceable in this team right now, so of course they miss badly.
Yeah. And guys, please, those that are listening, I know some of you are already commenting, but please, 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 leave your comments. We'll read it here, right? How badly does this team need Samuel Piet? What do you guys think of the
Well,
midfield?
Patrick White said, "What about a 4-3-3 when Piet comes back?" LPF said he can't function. I think he can in a 4-3-3. I think he has the work rate for it. I don't think he has enough for 90 minutes. But I think he's got enough for, if you're talking about every single game for a full season, I think he's got enough for 70, 75 minutes in a 4-3-3.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think he does. He's shown it. He's proven it over and over again. I don't know what else he needs to do to prove that he can actually do that. Yeah, it will be great. And again, Elias, it almost feels like they're trying to this coaching staff is trying to kind of transit us into a different scheme, slowly get us away from that, from what we've been used to seeing for so long now, these past few years, right? Now, next up we want to talk about the wingbacks slash
Mm-hmm.
midfielders. Elias, I had a hard time calling them wingbacks today. There was Alex Kuboglu on the right and Dante Sealy on the left. Now, the story of the day, last night and of the day, everybody's talking about Dante Sealy, right?
Yeah.
Wow, came out punching yesterday, right? With Sealy playing, it did feel like Sealy was playing a little bit higher. I didn't see him go
Mm-hmm.
down as often, but it really did feel like he was playing at the midfield level, sometimes even higher than the midfield, almost at the striker position. He was
Yeah.
actually almost a winger, Elias, that I saw
A
him
lot of the
play.
time, yeah.
Yeah, and while Guboglu will make sure to stay lower, I didn't see him again attack that much. I saw him stay back. What do you think of this?
Look, I think, excuse me, I think that planning for a team like DC is important because when you look at how they play, CJ Stroud on one side, Joao Beglu, I think is how it's pronounced. I'm sorry if I butchered on the other side. These are players that you have to pay attention to. And I kind of disagree with you. I think Dante Sealy had a decent amount of defensive responsibility, but what I think was they essentially man marked CJ Stroud with Luca Petrasso. And we're going to talk about Petrasso later. But I think that was great because what that did instead is that forced Aaron Herrera to not be able to overload that right hand side because Dante Sealy was constantly a threat, and Aaron Herrera had to respect that. On the other side, right, Alexander Guboglu was phenomenal. I think he's getting better. I think he's improved from the Whitecaps game. I think every single time you see him on the field, he's going to be getting better and better. The fact that he's only 17 years old and he's locking up grown ass men, TAM players, designated players, and he's doing it while he wasn't as involved defensively as he was against Vancouver, but he was still doing his job in terms of continuing possession on his side. If I'm Tom Pearson and Jakiro Marshall-Rudy right now, I'm nervous as hell because the two of them provided so much support. And you know what I saw in Dante Sealy last night? I saw a 21-year-old left-footed Juan who would take people on, who ran his lungs out, who covered an insane amount of ground, who can't cross to save his life. And I don't know. I just saw it ticked all the boxes. And I think that when you have him at 21 instead of a finished product, like at what was Juan when he came to look up, 28, 29 years old,
Yeah,
right?
something
Late 20s. That is a finished product. That is what you're going to get. Dante Sealy still has so much more upside. And LP Hasfan with a good point because, their quality will drop, especially when they play against higher level teams. I'm not asking them to turn into, Jordi Alba and Alistair Johnston this season. But I'm saying against a team like Vancouver and against a fullback like Aaron Herrera, both of them respectively put in excellent performances and performances that frankly, they should be held to somewhat of that standard. So I love the performances and the fact that, again, they are 17 and 21. They have such a high upside.
I think with these kind of development clubs, even in Europe, Elias, it's like LP Habs fans fan, right? It's about you can't, it's gonna be ugly, and it might even get uglier before it gets better because they're learning. But the only difference that I think we've noticed with Guboglu the past few weeks since he has not shown his newness per se, right? He hasn't shown that he is, oh guys, I'm here, please have some sympathy on my
He
play.
will, but you're right, he hasn't yet.
He hasn't, and he I mean, he went against Ali Ahmed last week. He also went against Aaron Herrera. He's going against veterans and he's standing his ground. Is he gonna? I remember I think it was the Vancouver game at some point that, again, nervousness, maybe, everything's new to him, that at some point he just kind of completely missed a kick. And it was one of those things that you're like, frustrating because it's a professional level sport, but there's a lot of nerves. You're still new. Everywhere you go, literally is the first time you're facing that opponent. It's their first time for everything. So it's a debut in every game. So, but what we really like is that there's progress going on, right? There's progress. You can see that he's gaining that confidence. He's understanding his role. And something that Elias, he said in his press conference, he said, I've been playing this positions for the longest. I know what I have to do. Maybe a Ruan, or maybe even going down the depth chart. That would be Bugai, JMR. They haven't been playing this position their whole life, Elias. They don't know that they're learning what to expect. They're learning how to maybe control their fatigue and all that. So it's definitely a breath of fresh air to see someone naturally fit in that position, right? Dante Sealy, something that I observed from my end, I thought he had a fantastic game, but it's just because, again, we mentioned it a few times on this show. We thought that Tom Pierce has, and I think everybody agrees, Tom Pierce has an excellent cross. He can cross the ball really, really well. But as we said last week and the week before, when he doesn't cross the ball, what does Tom Pierce have? Doesn't seem like there's another facet to his game. And that's something that we saw differently with Dante Sealy, is that he knows when to switch on and switch off into defense and offense. And it was very evident. The only thing, Elias, is that when I was doing a little bit of research on Dante Sealy when we first signed him, before we signed him, I just wanted to kind of know about him. I was like, what went wrong in FC Dallas? Because he's always had potential. He's been well known for being the next big kid of the FC Dallas Academy. And based on what I read, it said that there's a lot of critique about his effort and the fact that he would disappear in games and just seem to play lazy. And maybe it was a change of environment that he needed. That's what I told myself at that point, right? Maybe that the change of environment will make a difference. And again, high praises to him for yesterday, but there were moments where you did see that laziness in defending, maybe a lack of concentration, or maybe not a full on understanding yet, right, of what he's supposed to be doing in that position. But beyond that, again, he
Yeah.
made some excellent defensive stops on the top in by the attacking three to allow CF Montreal to have opportunities for something. Did it work out every time? No, but at least you're giving your team a chance, right? And that's something that's a lot more than we can say about the times we've seen Tom Pierce in that position. He does excellent crossing, but is he going to be a proactive defender in the front three? Is he going to try to create that play on a breakaway? Not necessarily, because again, he's not. I don't think he's a natural wingback.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I mean, Tate kind of said it too, right? Pierce has the best cross on the team by far. I don't think anyone's debating that, but looking for looking like you bring him off the bench if you're behind in the second half, which is true and it's something they've done.
yeah,
But he
and it's
wasn't
worked
even
really
on
well.
the bench last night, which leads to a question from Robbie saying, "Is Pierce the newest member of the Laurent Courtois doghouse?"
Yeah, and before we get to that, and to add on to Robbie's question, right, Liz? In the post-game press conferences,
Yes.
yes, Laurent Courtois gave a very cold answer. Okay, now we've seen him answer funny stuff. We've seen him joke around. We've seen him say some stuff that's been sometimes a little bit weird.
Yes.
But he gave a very cold answer yesterday when asked about Tom Pierce on why he was missing from the game sheet. He only answered, "Yeah, he wasn't there tonight." Okay, can you give us more?
Really?
Can you give us
Are
more
you sure?
information why he was? Yeah, he wasn't there tonight.
Anyway,
What do you make of this, Elias? Is he in the doghouse? Did we miss something? He's been practicing. There's been no injury that we
he's
know
been
of.
training. No, exactly. I think that the doghouse implies multiple absences, right? If he's not even on the bench in Nashville, then you go, wait a minute
You
now.
start questioning it.
You start questioning it exactly. I think it's a bit too early to say doghouse. I do definitely think it invites questions because again, there is nobody with Tom Pierce's profile on the team where he can kind of just make a chance literally out of thin air if you give him the ball in midfield, right? So I think there is definitely something to it. Calling it the doghouse, I think you need at least 2 or 3 weeks of just completely MIA from the team sheet in general to be considered doghouse. But given the performances and given the lack of inclusion, the fact that you've got a 17-year-old playing on his weak foot instead of putting you on, it
And
walks
he's
like a duck and it quacks like a duck. It's a duck.
and he said it right. He's also said it. Elias Laurent Courtois has said Kuboglu's the best wing back in this team right now,
Yeah.
and he's playing them. Elias, he's making him play both positions.
Yeah.
It's a
Instead of bringing on,
17-year-old.
yeah,
Instead of bringing, like you're saying, as instead of bringing in uh,
an actual
uh
left back.
an actual left back, right? So that's, I don't know. He's really sending messages. It's very early on in the season, and Elias, I don't know if I'd rather have this happen, 4 games into the season or 4 games left in the season, like we saw last season, that there were a bunch of players in the doghouse that didn't seem to find a way to get out. Um, Matias Kokaro and all that, right? So
There was a half dozen by the end of the season.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, but they were very impressive performances. Definitely exciting for the next few games. So let's talk about the back three, which was super
Let's
super
do it.
exciting. Um, Joel Waterman, Luca Petrasso, jeez, and George Campbell.
George Hampton Campbell.
Oh, middle name.
What a
Middle
game.
name came
What a
out.
game. Yeah, full Govey. George Campbell, is already the best on-ball defender on the team. I think that goes without saying. The work he did with Christian Benteke, of all people. Again, the only slip up was the goal, which I think he would have covered if not for literally the thing that got the goal of return, which is the handball, because the handball literally bounced the ball away from Campbell's leg. I think maybe he gets a desperate tackle. Again, these are all hypotheticals. He did get beat over the top. I think he recovered well in that situation. The handball is what gave Benteke the space to finish.
Yeah.
But except for that 1 3-second blurb that was also clouded by a foul, he was perfect.
Yeah.
Everything Benteke had was a half snap at a shot, or was off his back foot. He wasn't comfortable for a single second, and you know Joel Waterman and Luca Petrasso both had a hand in that. But again, the meat of the job was done by George Campbell, and he was, for all intents and purposes, perfect. There was a and Fred Law talked about it, right? There's this anonymous survey that all the sporting directors and like front office people do, where they talk about, they answer anonymous questions. And George Campbell was ranked amongst the most underrated players in MLS. And at his position, I can't think of many people who are more underrated. And you look at games like this and you go, he deserves a spot on the national team because of the fact that in MLS, I can't think of many people that are 23 years old and that can put in a performance against such an experienced and lethal striker and basically shut him out of the entire game. So again, George Campbell, chapeau. We could dedicate an entire episode to all the things he did right last night. We're not going to do that because, again, who's got the time? But yeah, George Campbell, wow. What a way to come back from injury and kind of remind everybody that, yeah, that's my spot and I don't care who's here. Nobody's taking it.
Yeah, and absolutely. He did a fantastic. He really set the tone on that side. I know we talked about it a lot last year when that his chemistry with JMR was definitely something that was making the team perform a lot better. But truth of the matter lies, I didn't see like that kind of say chemistry with JMR and George Campbell be any different when Guboglu's there, because it's almost again like George Campbell sets the tone on that side. He's like, I'm here,
Yeah.
just do what I tell you do, and we'll figure it out from there. That's the way I see it, right? He really
I
takes.
agree with you. I think he has maybe less license to go forward,
Yeah,
but on the defensive side of the ball, I completely agree with you. That side is completely locked down.
yeah,
I don't think we're gonna get as many George Campbell trademark adventures forward, where he kind of ends up in the opposing penalty area by some act of God. But I do think defensively, you're right. They do already look very much in sync.
yeah, and it's
And
and
Robbie,
it
again, one of our few good players. I mean, again, Robbie and
he
I disagree on most things, but George Campbell is not one of them.
love you, Robbie. But again, George Campbell did just set the tone, and you can see, Elias, as the game
Mhm.
goes on, when attacking players just go on that side, they're like, I just can't.
Nope.
Anything I do just it doesn't work. So I'm gonna try the other side, see if that works. And then what do they do with George Campbell? They change him to the other side because they want to make sure that that's locked down, right? Which is something we saw Benteke do. Benteke has in the past, and this is something we spoke with Gregory over the week in our up, in our up video, where I said Benteke has continuously given CF Montreal so many headaches with the
Mhm.
way he just completely dominates the center backs. He does. He just does. He's like a whole different level. And
Every
it's
center back in the league has
and
has
yeah, and I'm not
gotten
just saying
dominated at
CF
some point.
Montreal, but it's just
Yeah.
because we watch CF Montreal so closely. But if you just watch him in any game, he's a man among kids. Like he
Yeah.
really is controlling everything. So
Literally.
it's really it was really really impressive to see George Campbell just step up, and there's going to be plenty of other forwards, and we're going to need those center backs to step up. As for the rest, Petrasso, I think Joel Waterman did his job. I saw a few comments online that people said that he was the worst. I liked his performance. I mean, it wasn't again. No news is good news to me for the center backs. If they stand out, great, good job. Like George Campbell, high praise. But if they don't stand out for any wrong reasons, then I think we're okay, in my opinion.
Mhm.
Now let's talk about Petrasso. Okay.
Yeah, we actually got a question from Emil about Petrasso.
Yes.
We need to start revising positively our opinion of Petrasso.
Yeah, exactly. And that goes along with my question, right? So is Petrasso right now doing enough to solidify his spot on the left side? Because I was the first one in this show. I think the first one to criticize in this show when I first saw him play in the first game against Atlanta, where and everybody was like, "Why aren't you playing Alvarez? Why aren't you playing Alvarez?" Right, including myself. Why are you not playing Fernando Alvarez? He's a natural there, and Petrasso does not look comfortable in that position. He looks out of sorts. It doesn't seem to work. Is he doing enough now? Have we seen him progress enough from Atlanta to yesterday to actually say, you know what? He's pretty decent in that position. What did you think, especially with that Dante Sealy? Kind of both of them very like fast. They seem to switch really well with each other. What do you think of that?
I don't think he's done enough to be a starter. No.
Okay.
That being said, he played really well. He did exactly what was asked of him. He did and again, you're 5'9" and you have Christian Benteke behind you. You're gonna lose the header. He lost one header. A Benteke honestly probably should have done better on. Didn't have been a goal. But up behalf of saying we have nobody to replace Petrasso considering they refuse to start Alvarez. So by default, he has his starting role. And until Jalen Neal comes in to put some pressure on that left-handed side, I agree. But the thing is, Luca Petrasso was everywhere last night. And this is more, I feel like this is more an indictment of how ineffective DC was than of how good Luca Petrasso was. He did very well and he did all the things right. But it seemed like everything he did, they kind of just let him do it. DC kind of just said, okay. And then he just did it. So props to him for actually following through and doing the right thing. When you play against better teams that won't just let you run 20 yards through lines or combine with Dante Sealy like your prime Barcelona and then almost draw a penalty, but then get booked for simulation instead, doing stuff like that is absolutely the right thing that will put you in better graces. And again, for him, it will also increase his confidence because, again, we talked about it, right? It's a player out of position that did not look super comfortable, and obviously your confidence takes a hit. Games like this will make you feel so much more confident for good reason. Did he do enough to become a starter, though? Absolutely not. I still think he has way too many glaring things that need to be addressed. Dante Sealy helped block the gap that was there, that was always exploited when Tom Pierce was back there. Because again, when Tom Pierce was at left back, that ball over Tom Pierce to put pressure on Luca Petrasso happened every 5 minutes. Against Dante Sealy, that wasn't happening because again, he can recover that much quicker. And I feel like even though he didn't do as much defensively, he did cover his side more and discourage that kind of play. So yeah, Luca Petrasso still has a lot to do. Kind of like Prince Owusu. I think he's done enough to kind of cement his spot for now. But once better players become fit, I don't think he's done enough to just say I am a starter, no matter what.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, I've seen progress in my opinion, but I also it's all hypothetical how good or how well Jalen Neal will mesh into that line or how well he'll do, right? But we definitely, I think everybody is anxious to see what he can bring to the table, and if he can really push Petrasso
Absolutely.
in that position, right? So I just have one last question about the defenders because we did speak about the excellent performance about George Campbell. Now let's not forget George Campbell is in the last year of his contract this year, and he has an option next year.
Mm-hmm.
What should we expect from him this year? Now we're doing a little bit of prediction. I know we did that in preseason, but based on what we've seen, what can we expect from him this year? Do you see him making that next jump and all that? What do you think?
I think the performances right now, you look at the standard of the other center backs. I think it's clear George Campbell is the best center, the most informed center back on the team. You look at the way he played in Atlanta, you look at the way he played last night, and you look at how complicated that right side was when he wasn't there. More importantly, you look at the way things were going in his absence. I still don't see how he's not at least how he's not considered for the national team because he can really do it all, and he does it at such a high level while also not compromising his side of the defense. And at the age of what, he's 24 now, 23, 24 years old.
23, yeah.
He's operating at an insane level. And again, the biggest criticism of him in the last year and a half were his decision making, the fact that he put himself in bad positions. He's kind of taken that out of his game completely. So I think that honestly, there's no way he's not one of the best center backs in MLS by the time in the next year or two.
I agree.
And if he goes to, I don't think he's going to go to Europe because he is a little bit wily and he is a little bit unpredictable at times. So he has to kind of shore that up first. Because if there's one thing Europeans love, it's consistency. But in MLS, I think he has the potential to become one of the best in the league easily.
100%. Quick question. Don't have to get an explanation. Do you think anybody in this team can replace him right now?
It's a hypothetical, but Jalen Neal, hypothetically. But realistically, no.
I don't think anybody can. That's my question. That's simple. I'm not even going to explain it. I just don't think anybody has is at his level.
I don't think it needs to be explained because it's right in front of our face. Besides Jalen Neal, which again is entirely hypothetical, who the hell knows?
100%. So let's talk about the man of the match. Jonathan Sirois was the man of the match and had a solid game. That's already 2 games in a row, Elias, that we've seen Sirois pretty much settled. He seems a little bit more calm, a little bit less frantic, and trying to do a lot. Elias, in the press conference that he held this week, he said, one of the things he said, he's like, I'm really trying to focus on just doing the basic things. And he said, I lose myself when I do too much. And so I'm just trying to keep it simple, trying to do my thing. Can we expect them really at this point? Because again, yesterday I felt like his performance showed that he was calm. He was, he was in control. Yes, did he do a few mistakes? 100% he did. But again, when working with a 3 midfield, it makes a big difference. But what did you think of his performance last night?
Jonathan Sirois this year, pound for pound, is one of the best shot stoppers in MLS. I think he has the most saves, and I think he also has the most goals prevented. He also has, 6 goals conceded in 4 games, which is not ideal. But that's more to do with the defensive shape than anything else. Because you look at some of the goals he conceded, and I'm sorry, I can't blame him for the overall. Again, I don't remember every single goal off the top of my head, but I don't blame him for at least 4 of the 6, and the other 2 I probably just don't remember.
No, but Elias, sorry, a lot of these goals, we're not going to analyze each one.
Yeah,
could he have done better? Maybe in some, yeah.
Maybe.
But the truth of the matter, and this is something that Laurent Courtois spoke extensively about. He said he shouldn't be getting in a position to have to save the ball. It's because we're not clearing that second ball. Say it's a corner kick. He shouldn't have to be placed in a position where he needs to make an amazing stop.
Exactly.
This starts
and he and he's doing it anyway.
Yeah, and that like you said, yes, the conceded goals. I mean, it's a stat, it's a number, and it makes sense. But you're absolutely right. He is one of the best ones in the MLS. Now, is he going to take that next step this season? In your opinion?
Yes, 100%. I think he was disappointed in not getting called up to the national team, which is understandable considering the poor defense is probably the reason. Because you keep a clean sheet against Minnesota, looks a lot better. You don't concede 3 goals against Atlanta, looks a lot better. But pound for pound, shot stopper is one of the best in the league. That includes Dane Sinclair and includes, Maxime Crépeau and James Pantemis and all these other contenders for the national team. So yeah, I think by the end of the season, he's going to once again reintegrate and insert himself in the national team picture. Starting is probably a bit too much, given the head start Maxime Crépeau has over everybody. But I think fighting for that second spot is not outside the realm possibility, especially when he has the performances he's putting in, where he does look really just stuck in.
Absolutely, yeah, I agree with you. I'm pretty sure he knew a while back that he wasn't selected by the national team, and we'll get into the national team in a minute. But yeah, maybe that's kind of like maybe a little kick in the butt to like get him started, right? To get him like, hey, you know what? Now is the time because nobody likes missing out on those kind of calls in important games, right?
Absolutely, and you could tell he was disappointed too, and he kind of
Yeah.
spoke to the national team people about it, right? And look, defensive firm shores up, then that's not really a problem anymore. But you know,
All right. And just to finish up, let's talk about the subs. Did anyone impress
yes.
you in particular?
Well, let's take a look at the substitutes. There were five of them. They did a good job in maintaining the game, right? Ken Clark at 62, Bryce Duke and Jaquil Marshruti at 73, and then Fernando Alvarez and Sunusi Ibrahim at 84. I don't think anyone tilted the game on its head. Fernando Alvarez stepping into the middle was very interesting and putting Joel Waterman to the right. I feel like that got me a little bit nervous when George Campbell came off because of how good he was doing.
Yeah.
And maybe Christian Benteke saw that as maybe that's something I can kind of exploit. But no, they did a good job of kind of righting the ship and making sure that nothing stupid happened at the end of the game. But I mean, the attackers didn't really do a whole lot, right? The attackers didn't really affect the game in any way. When you have Kane Clark and Bryce Duke, and you have Sunusi Ibrahim come on, and you also have Jaquil Marshruti again. His substitute appearance against Vancouver was good. His substitute appearance last night was nothing, really. He didn't really do a whole lot. So that's probably the word is unconvincing. I hope he has fun says he left an impression. Not a good one. But
Yeah. I mean, but that's it. I mean, we are I think at least me, when he was signed, I was expecting so much more from JMR. I thought he was a kid with a lot of potential, as I mentioned with Dante Seeley, that maybe he just needed minutes and all that. But now this question starts being, when, JMR, what scenario are you gonna have that's gonna be perfect for you, right?
yeah.
So you said nobody impressed you, right? None of the subs. They
Nobody
just did
really
their
impressed me.
job.
No, Fernando Alvarez
Okay.
did well
Yeah.
for the 10 minutes if you include that at a time,
Mm.
but nobody really knocked my socks off.
Yeah.
And for all the people saying Jaquil Marshruti we better off as a midfielder, you want to take this kind of play, take it from the flank and put it smack in the middle of the park.
No.
Why?
No, thanks.
I don't get. I don't see it. I don't think central midfield is not the right spot. But I think honestly, I just think he needs to get back to enjoying his football, right? I
Yeah.
think he needs to get back to basics and kind of maybe just reset. Because we've seen good from him. We've seen more bad than good this season, but the quality is there. We saw it last year.
Yeah,
He
and a
just
lot of
needs
people
to kind of put his head down and keep working because I don't know. Maybe he was thrown off by the possibility of going to Portugal, going to Europe, and then that didn't happen, and then maybe it threw his focus off. But I think he needs to get back to the basics and kind of just focus on the fundamentals, kind of like Jean Sirois and what he's
Yeah.
focusing on.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly what I'll it's uh, like, kind of, a lot of people said maybe he just needs kind of a change of environment from Toronto, and maybe Montreal's going to do him well in that sense, that that's going to be like just a new world, and it's going to help him out. We haven't seen that, and hopefully it comes. We don't know. But that's it for CF Montreal for today. We're going to go ahead and move on with the Canada's national team roster
Yes.
selection. Right,
Oh my God.
past week, the
National
national
team soccer's
team
back.
this past week, the national team announced their squad for their upcoming fixtures, and you have it there. We shared it on the screen. Were there any surprises for you? I don't want to go ahead and read the whole list
Um,
there, but were there any
any
surprises?
any surprises? I don't think there was anything that kind of knocked my socks off. Again, you know, Tom McGill is I don't get it. Um, but again, Jonathan Sirois, I think should have deserved a call up. He didn't get it. Nathan Saliba is probably the other big CF Montreal player that maybe people would have hoped to see there. But let's face it, the quality of his beginning of season was not up to the standard.
Yeah,
I don't think that he can really compete with Steven Eustachio or with Mathieu Choinière or Ismail Kone or anybody right now, at least. Jimmy Net LaBelle kind of got in over him. uh, who is a more versatile player as well, who has a higher work rate. I think ultimately Nathan Saliba, by the time the end of the season rolls around and people and MLS players are maybe in a bit more of a mid-season form, it's entirely possible. But for the time being, I was not at all surprised. One name that I'm very excited, and this was announced beforehand, it's not really a surprise, but I cannot wait,
Jefferson.
is Daniel Jebison.
Yeah, baby. Let's go.
Again, I'm not saying he's the next Jonathan David and he's going to score every game, but him, Promise David, Jonathan David, a whole lot of Davids on this team, and Kyle Laren as an attacking core. If you stick to this as a striker core, rather, how do you not get excited for this? Because that is insanely deep. And that means now that if Jonathan David and Kyle Laren, who I'm assuming because of just for continuity's sake, will probably get the start if Jesse Marsh goes back to a 4-4-2, I think they'll be the starting duo. The fact you have Daniel Jebison and you have Promise David coming off the bench for you is it is more important than I think any other kind of depth sub that you have. So for those two, I'm super happy that they picked Canada, and I cannot wait to see them get to work. Because with all due respect, I was sick of seeing Ike Ubo on this team. I couldn't do it.
You heard it here
Or
first.
Jonathan Astorio, honestly, but he's still there somehow in some way. Who knows?
That's
Dark magic, probably.
now. Now, Elias, I messed up because I do that frequently. We did have a few questions about the CF Montreal, so I'm very sorry, guys. We're backtracking here, but I do want to address our questions that we had, right, Elias?
Yeah, we
And
had two extra
yeah,
questions. One was from Normand. Curious about Nathan Silva's performance. If he continues to play this way, do you think he's headed for Europe? I
we,
think he's headed for respectfully for the bench. If he continues like this.
that's the
Um
take right there. That's the take.
no, I think honestly Nathan Saliba needs somebody to light a fire under his ass.
Yep.
You have Marco Donadel, who is a bona fide legend at the club in his literal position. And I think maybe Marco Donadel needs to take a week away from coaching the defense to kind of work with Nathan Saliba and remind him what is required of somebody of his position and of his quality, right? When I say the bench, it's not because I think he sucks. Nathan Saliba is probably the most talented and with the highest upside player with the highest upside right now on this team. Doesn't change the fact that he's been average at best this season. So again, midseason form is an entirely different story from a national team perspective, but no, Europe is not on the table right now. Not with the Wake spot.
No, I think somebody needs to show him YouTube videos of at what level Georgi Mihailovic and Ismail Kone were playing before they went to Europe, so he can have an
That
idea
too. That too.
what he needs. Because right now,
Yeah.
as I've said, any player we've spoken about Bryce Duke with John Still, right? About him wanting to go to Europe. He absolutely said he wants to go to Europe next year. He does not want to stay in Montreal. This is what he told John Still on media day, and we discussed it with John Still. Like you can't play at that level. You can't be struggling at
No.
an MLS level if that's what you want. You need to absolutely be on the record books every week in the MLS team of the week. You have to do something that your name stand out. And the same goes for Saliba. No matter how much CF Montreal fans love him, or, how much support he has here, that's good. And he's Montreal's own. That's okay. But if the vision is really to go to Europe for him at such a young age,
Yeah.
the MLS has got to be back playground
Uh-huh.
league.
Absolutely.
So yeah, and
Yeah.
the second question that you had there
Yeah.
for us,
One last question before
yeah,
we head back to the national team from Tate. Are you concerned about the team's lack of goals scored to date? You
Ugh.
bet I am.
Yeah.
It's 3 consecutive games now without a goal scored. The annoying part is that the chances are there, right? It's not they've been without chances. You've hit 3 posts in 3 games. You miss all these chances. Hit 3 posts in the last 2 games, actually. Shots that should at the very least be on target go wide. Shots that go in are just on target. Yeah, I am concerned. Uh, Kane Clark isn't playing, and he created so many chances last year. Giacomo Vrioni isn't even close to fit, and he's supposed to be, your designated player and goal scorer. So yeah, for the time being, I'm concerned. If they can manage to get 1 or 2 in the next game or two, cool, but even if they score a goal next game, I'm still concerned with the offense because
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw improvements in attack and I saw more interesting things going forward. You still got to finish. I don't care. You still got to
Yeah.
finish.
I would much rather see yesterday finish a 4-4 tie than a 0-0 tie. There needs to be some sort of scoring, some sort of creativity. Yeah, you can't just continue going this way. Absolutely. So going back to Canada men's national team.
Yes,
So Canada plays Mexico on March 20th. And guys, I'm sorry,
yes,
we're sorry
sir.
again for jumping around for a spot in the finals. What are your thoughts on this game? And does Canada have a realistic opportunity to win this game?
Well, I was gonna mention it because it came across my timeline earlier today, but Patrick also mentioned in the chat. Canada are betting favorites against Mexico, and I don't think that's ever happened ever before.
It's amazing.
Um,
Because
what a time to be alive! Yes,
yeah.
this Canadian national team is, I think, the most informed in Concacaf. If you want to nickel and dime and go player for player in the squad against the US, you can. Um, they have Christian Pulisic, which is he's in incredible form with Milan, and also just Captain America. Whenever he puts on that American shirt, he turns into fucking Lars Overmark or something. But yeah, I still think Canada is currently the best team in CONCACAF. I think if you want to back that up, you need the silverware to prove it. Right? You can beat your chest and you can go, we're the best team. We have the deepest squad. We have Alfonso Davies and Jonathan David and all these players and rah rah rah. If you lose to the US again in the Nations League final, if you get knocked out by Mexico, then here's your best squad in CONCACAF trophy. Who gives a shit? Um, it's
Well
time to
said.
start getting results, right? You're a year and change away from the World Cup. Now is the time to start putting your foot down and saying, yes, we are not only the best squad in CONCACAF, but we're also backing it up and outplaying the opponents that we're supposed to be better than. So yes, I'm looking forward to this Mexican game. I would have loved for it to be in Canada or I don't know who the home team is, but it's in the US for some reason because you know
Makes sense.
whatever. I mean, it's in LA, right? So it's going to be mostly Mexico fans anyway.
Hmm.
Just I mean, it's literally like what, an hour away from the border.
Hmm.
Um, but if there's any Canadians in the stands, thank you and good job, and I'm proud of you. But I still can't wait for this game. Oh, I've missed either national team in actual competition. The women don't have a actual competition for another year and change, so at least I get some bit of national team stuff. But I've missed it.
Definitely very important games, and and I agree with you. I think it's very important. Look, Elias, during the previous World Cups when I was a kid, we used to collect the books with the stickers of the players.
Hell yeah, man! Those
And
are
one of the
incredible.
one of the important things of that book, Elias, was the history of the team, because they kind of give you a little summary of like what has Canada
Yeah.
been up to, what has Peru been up to, what has Argentina been up to. And if there's not much to write about Canada going up to the World Cup during the hype, then it's gonna make it harder to believe in them, right? And
Mhm.
we've all seen that the history of those teams that even the experts are saying, yeah, I don't know, they might barely make it past the group stage, if so. So that's not what you want Canada to do. You want them to go with some kind of momentum and like excitement that they just won this trophy, they got all this new talent going in. So
Yeah.
very very important competition for them and very important game.
Mhm.
100%. Who should we be keeping our eye on Canada? I know you mentioned Jebison. Is there anybody else you'll be keeping your eye on Canada's side of the game?
As a starter, hopefully Tayshaun Buchanan,
Mm.
right? Hopefully Tayshaun Buchanan, because God knows, it was not ideal at Milan, right? Of course, breaking your leg tends to maybe
Slow you down.
just a little bit, but he's been playing a bit more at Villarreal, not a whole lot more, but he started against Real Madrid yesterday actually.
Mm. Okay.
Um, and look, it's minutes, right? He's in a top 5 league in Europe still. Um, he's on a team that's not like he's in a team that is serious. Villarreal is still no joke. Um, so hopefully this is the chance for him to kind of get his footing again and kind of get his legs back, his sea legs back, because he's so important, especially now they're not playing a 3-back and he's not playing wing back anymore. He's playing an out and out wide midfielder where he can be at his most dangerous. Oh, an informed and healthy Tajon Buchanan is terrifying.
Yeah, I hear you. Which tactic should Jesse choose for the game?
The 4-4-2 works. Um, I still think they're a team that needs a 4-3-3, just because I'm not the biggest Kyle Larin fan under Jesse Marsh. I stand by that. He's proven me wrong a couple times where he's had some good performances. I just think from overall, the Canadian national team is really just one elite ball winning midfielder away from becoming a top 20 team in the world. And yeah, Robbie's optimistic. Do you know how good you have to be to get Robbie excited for you?
He said 2025 is different. Okay, let's give him a chance. Good job, Robbie.
That's true. Robbie's turning the corner.
Yeah.
But no, Robbie's absolutely right. They have a good chance. Mexico's never an easy opponent.
They'll surprise you. Yeah.
Especially in which is basically home field advantage. But yes, I think Canada absolutely has the quality to win this game, and they should back themselves to win this game.
Yeah. Prediction?
3-1 Canada.
Yeah. I say 2-1, and it's gonna come to the last minute.
Oh, okay. What about USA Panama, Andy? Let's hear it.
5-0. Anyways, so with that said, if Canada
You're so
gets past,
pessimistic, Andy. You think USA's gonna lose 5-0? That's crazy.
All right. So
They're
with that said, they're okay. But if Canada gets past Mexico, the final will be played on Sunday the 23rd. Which means that we probably won't be able to do the pod until maybe a later.
We will keep you posted with what we decide to
do.
Yeah, we will let you know the second we figure out. First of all, they got to make the final.
Yeah.
First of all, they got to make the final.
Yeah.
And if they make the final, we will then keep you posted on what's the happening.
Yeah, because this show could be a mess if we do it live. So we're gonna control ourselves, and we're gonna keep you updated throughout the week. You guys have seen
absolutely
that we're very transparent with you guys through our social media. Well, that brings it to an end. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. As always, the podcast will always be free to listen and watch on all of our platforms. Make sure to check out our Patreon page for exclusive member content, which we have some coming up for you, and all of our social media platform. Guys, we just started Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Please join us, follow us, and all that for more content. Big shout out to all of you who joined the Patreon and also are following us through other social media networks. And thank you again to all of you who tuned in tonight. And see you next week for episode 219 of The Ball is Round.